Have you fallen into an open manhole recently? Do you find yourself in the company of strangers? Well, then you might very well be in the feature Underground. Friends, Romans, countrymen, my name is Hunter Lanier, and I am here today with a review of the upcoming documentary Megadoc. Directed by Mike Figgis, the director behind the great Leaving Las Vegas, the film is a behind-the-scenes documentary of the making of Megalopolis, the film, of course, directed by Francis Ford Coppola that released last year. The film follows the making of Megalopolis from the earliest table readings, some of which span back to 2001, all the way to the film's debut at the Cannes Film Festival. What makes Megadoc inherently interesting is the extended fetal period of Megalopolis, which extends back to the 1980s. The unusual filming dynamic, given that the film was completely financed by its director, and all of the erratic publicity surrounding the film before it was made, while it was being made, and then following its release. Megadoc mostly delivers on these points of interest, but keep in mind that this is no Hearts of Darkness or Burden of Dreams. It doesn't have that high drama and that wild sense of adventure, largely due just to those films having exotic locations and Megalopolis mostly being filmed on city streets and, in warehouses. In Megadoc, we see Coppola get frustrated trying to communicate his vision to his crew and bring that vision to life. But we don't see, entire acts of nature destroy productions. We don't see Coppola himself descending into madness like Colonel Kurtz in Hearts of Darkness. There's nothing that intense that hangs over Megadoc. It feels a little more pedestrian in that you're basically just watching a director struggle with a vision that is so grand and elusive that he can't get his crew to understand what he wants, and he doesn't always even know what he wants himself. He's eternally hoping that the creative spirits recognize his noble artistic intentions and meet him halfway. The only tangible drama in the film is the threat of financial ruin, which doesn't actually end up feeling that real, and the constant rumblings of revolt among the crew, which does feel very real. Before I get into the meat of my thoughts, I do want to say that Figgis himself does appear on screen several times throughout the film, kind of serving the purpose of a Greek chorus, updating us on things that we might not have seen, or explaining why we're not seeing something on film. He admits at one point that every time something goes wrong on set, he gets a little excited because it means that there's more drama for his documentary. In other words, fly-on-the-wall documentaries are one thing, but what people really kind of are looking for is fly on the pile of shit. This is all to say that there is obviously a negativity bias to this movie because that's where the drama is. All of the footage of the production just going normally and all of the routine happenings, none of that is in the movie because it's just not as exciting. I think most of you understand that, but I just wanted to put that out there as a quick preface. Also, in this review, I will be getting into what is in the documentary and talking about what I think is most interesting about it. So if you want to watch this documentary without knowing anything beforehand, bow out now. You won't hurt my feelings. But if you are bowing out, just to give a quick summary of my thoughts, this movie, I think, whether you loved Megalopolis, hated it, or were somewhere in the middle, Megadoc is, I think, worth watching. It is very entertaining, a lot of fun. It's revealing in parts, and I do hope it is included on any future physical releases of Megalopolis. When the film starts, you're already watching something interesting because you're seeing the very earliest stages of the process. So you're seeing the table reads, and you're seeing early rehearsals, and you're seeing Coppola engage many of the primary actors in these dorky acting class games in order to bring down inhibitions and get everyone bonded. My favorite part of this section is seeing the octogenarian Jon Voight play these first day of high school theater class games with 20 and 30 somethings, then get called out by Coppola for sitting in the director's chair. It's also in these early moments that you get the first signs of the tension that will continue to grow between Coppola and Shia LaBeouf. And I was not expecting their relationship, their dynamic, to be the most interesting and entertaining part of this movie. Throughout the film, LaBeouf is constantly pressing Coppola for more clarification on the screenplay, and Coppola just has nothing to give. It's a little interesting since after the movie has come out and the reception to the movie, knowing the reception to the movie, LaBeouf is pushing Coppola on things that the audience, I think, also pushed back on. As Adam Driver says later in the documentary, in a much more level-headed way than LaBeouf communicates to Coppola, it seems like Coppola understands most fundamentally the emotions and ideas that he wants to communicate through the film, but he doesn't have the literal scene logic that an actor like Shia LaBeouf might want or need to play the part. Other actors seem okay with this quirk of Coppola's, but LaBeouf cannot take his hand off the wheel for fear of the film going off the cliff. Another aspect of Shia LaBeouf that's really interesting in this movie is that he's constantly bringing up film history, and he clearly sees himself existing within that film history, within a royal lineage of sorts. You get the sense that for Aubrey Plaza, this is nothing more than a job or just a wacky experience or both. But for LaBeouf, he's fighting alongside legends in the battlefield of art. At one point, he actually is saying to Coppola that he's afraid of getting fired, just like Harvey Keitel got fired from Apocalypse Now. And then later on, he's grilling Hoffman, getting Hoffman to tell him stories about Midnight Cowboy. Later on, after one of his many spats with Coppola, LaBeouf is decompressing with Jon Voight, and he asks Voight about a story that he's heard about Voight getting in a physical altercation with a director, and Voight downplays it. It's like Shia LaBeouf jumped into an Arthurian storybook that he grew up reading and found that all of the legendary knights are just regular dudes that drink and play card games, and in between they do some good deeds, but mostly they just drink and play card games. And if I can play armchair psychologist, it does seem like LaBeouf is being a little performative in the movie. While I don't doubt that he wants the movie to be as good as it can be, and is pushing Coppola with that in mind, the fact that he's constantly bringing up Harvey Keitel and Marlon Brando and grilling Jon Voight and Dustin Hoffman on their careers, it shows that he's well aware of the cinematic legacies of these eccentric figures, these eccentric method actors from the most dangerous era of American filmmaking. You get the sense that he would very much like to be part of that club. And part of being in that club is being difficult on set, especially when there is a documentary crew to film you. Aside from Coppola and LaBeouf's relationship at large, there are two very specific moments in the movie that I think are the most revealing. In one, they argue about what truth is in the context of cinema. Coppola tells LaBeouf that Kramer versus Kramer is nothing more than lights flashing on a screen, and that the only truth in cinema is the audience, how they interpret what they see. LaBeouf counters with no. Hoffman was going through a divorce himself at the time, and that is what gave truth to his performance, and that's why that movie has truth in it. Again, showing how hyper-aware Shia LaBeouf is of all of these legends of film history. Coppola reiterates that the only truth is what the audience feels, not what the actor feels. I'm paraphrasing, but this is the gist of their argument. Here, it's most obvious that Shia LaBeouf, in that method actor way, needs something literally real to hold on to and to use as fuel. And Coppola sees the film as this abstract thing that will reach the truth by going through the bathroom window rather than going through the front door. The other revealing moment between them is when Coppola is obsessed with this tiny costume detail, and it's holding up the entire production. Everyone on set is some version of a yes man, not wanting to upset Coppola, an aging Coppola, on his, like, potentially his final movie. So everyone's just doing whatever he wants them to do. Nobody wants to push back, except for Shia LaBeouf, who has no problem doing so. LaBeouf sits down next to him like they're two kids at recess and presses him that he's making too big a deal out of this costume, and that the only reason he cares about the costume is that it's some irrelevant detail from his childhood that no one else is going to care about. Coppola pushes back and explains why the costume is important, why it is relevant, which then Figgis himself tells us that is literally a story from Coppola's childhood. This moment is interesting because it shows the smartass student actually being correct, and also that it really drives home how personal a movie Megalopolis is. And I gotta say, Shia LaBeouf does a great service to this documentary because he makes Coppola more interesting. By pushing back on Coppola so much, he brings out emotions, he forces Coppola to engage with new ideas. He makes this documentary a lot better than it would have been. As far as other revealing parts of the documentary, we do see Coppola's lead up to firing the special effects supervisor. And then as a result of that firing, a big part of the art department quits. In my review of Megalopolis, I think I do remember talking about the wide discrepancy between the visuals in the movies, some of which were fantastic and some of which were just flat out ugly. This makes a lot more sense to me now, knowing just how much turbulence there was. There's a meeting in the movie where you see Coppola and the special effects and art department go back and forth. And it's one of the moments in the movie where you really see Coppola's age show, because he doesn't seem to have the know-how to speak about special effects to them. It reminded me of my own day jobs where I've worked with older people and they're smart, but they just don't have basic computer skills. Through Megadoc, you also get a better sense of Coppola's intentions with Megalopolis. Not only his abstract and personal intentions, which I've alluded to already, but just how much the movie was designed to evoke theater. Theater is brought up a lot in this movie as part of the filmmaking process, and the finished film does have that heightened reality of theater to it. And going back briefly to those ugly visuals, I remember talking about how the movie, many scenes in the movie had I called it like an overly digital look to it that I just thought was not pleasing to look at. During Megadoc, there's a scene where you see one of the film cameras filming Megalopolis, and on the film camera, it has a super high shutter speed as it's filming. Now, I'm not a camera expert. I've never made a movie, so I could be totally wrong, but I'm wondering if the film was just shot with a really high shutter speed and it created this overly crisp look. If you know more about this stuff than I do, leave a comment. Let me know why I'm wrong. Given the long gestation period of Megalopolis, one of the cooler things that Megadoc does is that it intersperses old table read and rehearsal footage and screen tests with the actual footage that ended up in the movie. We see decades-old footage of Robert De Niro and Uma Thurman. We see Ryan Gosling actually act out the part that went to Shia LaBeouf against green screens and with extras. Another highlight from the movie is that Figgis sits down with George Lucas, and Lucas affectionately refers to Coppola as a jump off a cliff guy. One big complaint I have with Megadoc is how the film ends. It ends, as I said before, at the Cannes Film Festival with Megalopolis getting a standing ovation. Now, if you were watching Megadoc and you had no knowledge of 2024, you would think, oh, all of the financial struggles, all of the drama of the filmmaking, it all came to a happy ending. But most of us know that the drama didn't stop there. There was drama around the film's release. There was drama around its reception. There was drama around its poor box office numbers. I would have loved to have seen interviews with Coppola and the crew following the film's release to get their thoughts on everything now that it was over. But alas, nothing. Coppola's final interview in the film is fairly benign as well. Well, those are all my thoughts on Megadoc. Now is the time for you to let me know your thoughts on my thoughts. Next up, I will be going to Austin, Texas for Fantastic Fest. Hopefully, I'll see some interesting movies there that I can record videos for. Regardless of whether or not they are interesting, I will be making videos. Until then, I leave you, as always, with the comforting knowledge that every day underground is a good day.